It's so weird that it's so easy for us to sit together communally, and yet it's so hard for us to combine our hearts because we aren't able to communicate the things that are important to us. We don't have the language, we don't have the attention span, we don't have the will. The other person also has the exact same problems and things going on as well. And that protest from Friday, and I can't help but wonder if the people from around the country who saw it, if there wouldn't have been a better way for us to communicate those things that are really important to us. People who are worried because their families are going to be deported. Good, shouldn't be here anyway. I wonder if you instead were able, and why? Because the people who might say that don't have that worry. So therefore they can't understand it. You follow? Any more than a person who's never been skydiving before can understand skydiving. So what do you have to do? Explain it through an analogy, through a metaphor. Being lonely, as Jung says, is not having nobody around. It's having nobody around that you can talk to express the things that are important to you. Second period, we went in the practical direction. So you can watch it if you kind of want. But in second period, I talked a lot about these things here. And I was just saying that it's important to understand that all of these things are going on in you when you're trying to communicate. And also to understand that these are the same things that are going on in other people. And by the way, this is difficult even if you both want to communicate. Now imagine if you guys are adversarial and you don't really want to communicate. You're like looking for the problem in what the other person says. You follow? So I was talking to one of my former students. She was out at the protests, was it Friday, was it? Down the street on Highland? Yeah, the one on Highland. Yeah, so how many of you were at that? Curiosity. How many were at that? Oh, bullshit, I know some of you were. I saw the videos. Yeah, I saw the videos. So I was talking to her about it because it's a really important question. So whatever the policies are aside, here's the question. What do you think that the group was trying to convey? What was the point of that gathering? What were they trying to communicate? What's that? So together and united, for what purpose?
They don't want to get deported.
What's that?
They don't want to get deported.
So they don't want to get deported. What else?
To prove that immigrants or Hispanics and Latinos actually do something for this country.
Okay. So to inspire people to actually do something for the country. What else?
Make ICE stop working.
Make ICE stop working?
Yes, to deport them.
So stop ICE from deporting? Okay. Now, if you're sitting anywhere except for in San Diego, let's say you're sitting in some other state and you're watching it on television, what got communicated? What's that?
What I saw from that?
Yeah.
Just them fighting each other. A bunch of videos.
So you saw people fighting each other.
They were
You saw
like making a mess in the street.
you saw people destroying property. You saw people flying the flag of a foreign government. And you saw people with signs that were very demanding. So was there a difference between what was trying to be communicated and what got communicated? Yeah, and this is a big problem. Because you might look at that and go, who cares? I'll tell you why we should care about those kinds of things. Because the people who vote for those kinds of things, when Trump stands up there and Trump says, it's a foreign invasion. If we're here, we're like, it's not a foreign invasion. Imagine if you're in Arizona, Wyoming, Florida, Texas, South Dakota, Oregon, anywhere else, and you see what you saw. Does it look like an invasion to you? That's this problem, man. That's this problem. And we can say, it's how the media portrayed it, probably. Were there a lot of fights? People who were there were a couple, a few here and there. Was it representative of the whole thing? Not really, you know. But the people who went, I talked to some of them, I asked them, how'd you feel afterwards? And they're like, I felt great. I felt good. And I asked them, what did you get across? And they had the same kinds of things all over the place. But do you think that any of the things that we just said we were trying to communicate, were any of those actually communicated? And that was the exact opposite of all of that. And so we can talk about whether it was the media, whether it was the people. I didn't see anything on the news about it, almost at all. I went entirely off of what I saw students and former students posting on Instagram. All the live streams, that's everything I saw. So you see the difficulty now with if it's just you who wants to communicate to another human being, a friend, family member, the things that get in the way when you actually want to hear each other. Now, hopefully you can see the difficulty when it's you and somebody else, and they don't really want to hear what you have to say. They're almost like looking for a reason to not like what you have to say. And that's just one individual. Now take it with groups. Now take it not just with groups that are looking at each other, but one group in San Diego or LA or Florida, and another group in New York, Wisconsin, Idaho, whatever. In other words, far away. And you see the difficulty of communication. And if you were there and you said, for example, I think I've mentioned before, I've been in a couple of riots in my life. I've mentioned this before? Yeah. Don't riot, right? Rioting is bad. Shouldn't do it. But anyway, it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun. But don't do it. The ones I was at, two specifically, I'll tell you about the second one. I was there specifically, I wasn't there to have my voice heard. I wasn't there to make change. I was there to hit cops. And that's the whole reason that most of us were there. We were there specifically to fight with police officers. There was a free Rage Against the Machine concert. If anybody listens to Rage Against the Machine, if you know who they are. Some people ended up in the hospital. A lot of people ended up in police custody after that night. But my point is that was a riot that we were in. And we went there specifically to fight. Now, there were people who were there because they wanted to address police reform. There were people who were there because they wanted to address certain social issues. But then there were the rest of us who were just there because we didn't like cops. We had enough of them growing up, and this was an opportunity to fight with them on somewhat equal grounds, you know? There weren't many of us who got out, but you can actually see me on the video, one of them. You see a police officer, we get corralled in, and there's a police officer, you can see it from the helicopter, that there's a horse, and I'm in the group of people that's getting stopped, and then somebody hit the cop in the head with a bottle. He was wearing a helmet, but it still got him to turn, and then that pulled the horse out, so the rest of us were able to escape and then therefore join the larger riot. Don't riot, okay? A lot of fun, but it's dangerous, don't do it. But you see how in all of that, there's so much miscommunication going on. We think we're being clear. We think that we're understanding things. When you hear that phrase, fuck you, I won't do what you tell me. Yeah, that was kind of the battle cry for my generation. And you might listen to Rage Against the Machine and go, yeah, they're right. But then you forward to another one of their songs and they say, fuck the G-Rides. I want the machines that are making them. Now, if you understand that, you understand something about Rage Against the Machine, which is something that they never hid in the first place. They're communists. They're very specific about that. They proclaim it. They say we are communists. We're a communist band, and we're making communist propaganda. Now, it's damn good communist propaganda. It's great music. They make incredibly good music. But there's a difference between the message that they're conveying, which is interesting, right? Because they're communists, but then we'll line up to pay millions of dollars to see them and buy their stuff and wear their merchandise. There's a disconnect that's there. And that's among people who really want to like each other. They really want to get along. When you look at all of the things that go into communication, it's a miracle that it ever happens at all. And even if we actually like each other, I don't know if any of you guys have a person where you can just say something to them like, I'm just, and they're like, I get you. And they really do. That's a special connection you have there. Or you guys are able to talk and you guys finish each other's sandwiches. That's a different kind of communication that happens there. Versus some people, I'm sure you can be really, really, really clear and they'll still have no idea what you're talking about. Or worse yet, you'll know people who aren't really listening. They're just waiting for their chance to talk. Like you might say, yeah, my family died yesterday, all of them. There was a car accident and they were driving down and your friend interrupts. Oh my God, I was in a car accident one time. It wasn't too bad though, like a little fender bender, but I was like, what? But oh man, there was so much damage. And it's so weird, we weren't even going that fast and there was all this kind of damage. Everyone was fine. In other words, You're talking about how you feel, and they hijack the conversation to make it about them. There are those people as well. Do they mean to be rude and obnoxious and self-centered? Probably not. They just are. So you can see a difficulty in communicating with a person like that. In that situation I mentioned a minute ago, well, how could you possibly convey what you're feeling if you don't have the vocabulary to say it? My whole family died in a car accident yesterday. I'm sad. Last week I went to go get a cheeseburger. I hate onions on cheeseburger. They put onions on my cheeseburger. I was so sad. Do I feel the same way in those two scenarios? But we use the same word, man. And that's what makes it so hard for us to be understood. You know, it's so weird that it's so easy for us to sit together communally, and yet it's so hard for us to combine our hearts because we aren't able to communicate the things that are important to us. We don't have the language. We don't have the attention span. We don't have the blah, blah. The other person also has the exact same problems and things going on as well. You know, what if your vocabulary is really big and the other person's vocabulary is very small and all they can understand is sad? Well, then you have to know how to communicate with that person. And how do you communicate with that person? Well, through metaphor, through life experience, through similes, through figurative language. That's why we have figurative language. Because if there's something I've been through, if any of you in here been skydiving before? Okay, how can I even explain it? How can I even explain it? I couldn't just tell you, it's like skydiving. You'd be like, I don't know what that is. I'd have to explain it to you in some way. You guys ever stick your head out the car when it's driving and you feel that wind blowing by? And then you ever been like trying to like move your head around because you can't breathe because the wind's coming at you too fast? Imagine if your whole body's out there like that. Yeah. And you have like this complete loss of control, but there's a sense of control because you know that the person driving the car can slow down and stop, but you also are aware that you can also get in a car accident, so there's also the element of danger. It's kind of like that. You give analogy, you give metaphor, you give simile. That's how you can explain things to people who can't relate to what it is that you're going through. I can't help but wonder if in that protest from Friday, and I can't help but wonder if the people from around the country who saw it, if there wouldn't have been a better way for us to communicate those things that are really important to us. People who are worried because their families are going to be deported. Good, shouldn't be here anyway. I wonder if you instead were able, and why? Because the people who might say that don't have that worry. So therefore they can't understand it. You follow? Any more than a person who's never been skydiving before can understand skydiving. So what do you have to do? Explain it through an analogy, through a metaphor. Imagine if someone you love, your family, was going through the things that people in Venezuela are going through, where they're starving to death, and they're in danger of being thrown into concentration camps, which they really are, and they have no hope for a future or better thing. So they decide to travel the thousands of miles by foot to get here, and they show a certain ingenuity, man. Wouldn't you want to do that for your family? Yeah, but I shouldn't because it's the wrong thing. I hear you, but there's also the real world. So you have this choice. Either do that or let your family starve and die. Which one would you choose? Or the words, you follow? In other words, there are ways to bridge those gaps, but it's hard to do. It's harder to do when we're in mobs, and it's harder to do when we're so disconnected, we're thousands of miles away or hundreds of miles away or ideologically away. I think the problem largely is going to be that we don't understand each other. Like most interpersonal problems, we just don't understand each other. Because maybe we don't want to, or maybe because both sides have a bunch of this stuff going on. But the whole promise of language is to be able to connect to people, to communicate the things, because being lonely, as Jung says, is not having nobody around. It's having nobody around that you can talk to express the things that are important to you, or have the ability to. I mean, we're all humans. We all have the same things that are important to all of us are important to all of us. So how come we can't get our hearts to combine? And I think it's that thing about language. We're so disconnected, we don't know what to say or what to do, and so we respond. And I don't mean this in the sense of like, there's that fear that we all have. I mean like actual, genuine, like primordial fear. That if I understand you, oh shit. You ever think about homeless people? Of course you don't, because you're selfish, only think about yourself. You ever think about homeless people?
Yeah.
Did it ever occur to you that they're actually a human being? It's I know, radical claim. This is the controversial thing I mentioned earlier. But homeless people, it's built into it. They're people. You know that they had parents? You know they had a mom one day who held them and looked at them and probably said, wow, I want better for you than I had. I have these dreams and these goals and these things for you. And then something along the lines happened, and that's where they are now. As one of my former students pointed out, homeless people are like Pokemon. They all have their own special powers and abilities. If you know, you know. Whenever I walk past, I'm always thinking, what's your power? What's your ability? So I'm thinking like one of them just goes, I choose you. Okay, let's go. For being here right here with me now. But when it occurs to you like, oh my gosh, this was a human being who had loves and hates and passions just like mine. And here they are on the street. Why? Because they took a bunch of drugs and alcohol. Oh yeah, not like any of us, right? Yeah, not like us. Not like family members we have. Largely the difference is going to be that they didn't have families that cared about them the same way. Why did they turn to those things in the first place? And if you understand that and you look them in the eyes and you realize, holy crap, that's a human being, it should impact how you treat them. When I look at you guys, I look at you guys as students, as a collection of non-human entities, or I look at you as individuals and as students. If I just look at you as grades, it's really easy for me. Oh my God, you're so stupid. You can't get this? What the hell's wrong with you? It's easy to think of you that way. Oh my God, you're just too damn lazy to do this. Oh my God, I'm just better than you because I get this. See how easy it is to do that instead of looking at you and saying, oh, this guy's got things going on. This person has these things going on at home. Now, that doesn't mean that therefore it's okay to fail. But I can't possibly be angry with you. I can't. Because I don't think any of us wakes up in the morning and says, I want to learn, my goal for today is to learn nothing. I don't think so. I know there are people who set out intentionally. We get to that point where we think, I can learn nothing from you. There's nothing useful in this. But that comes from like searing over time. You know what searing is? You take a steak and you put it on the hot grill, it sears it, and you turn it over, it sears it. Do you know why we do that? To lock it in, so that the juices stay inside. Sometimes your conscience can be seared. Sometimes your attitude can be seared to the point where you've experienced some things that have burned you so much that nothing can get in. And all that anger and hatred and fear and guilt and stubbornness and shame and arrogance is trapped inside to cook. So, before we assume that we've communicated, we should look at it and figure out if we have. And then maybe we can go from there. I think we'd probably be able to work out a lot more things if we just talked more, understood more. Questions, comments, concerns, complaints, criticisms, critiques?